Here we go. Um, we are continuing our deep dive into Forge of Darkness, Book 1 of the Carcanus trilogy. And we have now entered Part 3, The Proofs of Your Ambition. And this starts with Chapter 11. And we get some interesting developments once again. And the more I'm reading this, the more I'm seeing it just feels so staged, like a play. It really does. Just a way that you almost get this sense of, all right, enter from the left, Olar Ethil. Enter from the right, Arathan. And it just has that feel to it. The way the characters speak to each other in this very dramatic fashion, and so that's just after half of this book right now we're like a halfway point. We this all this stuff is really starting to sink in about the style of the writing, and it's pretty cool. So Arathan is our first point of view character here, and all he sees is desolation beneath a colorless sky. They're in Azathane lands, and doesn't seem like it's a nice place to be. He is speaking to, or he is hanging out with Sergeant Raskin and Draconis. And they're in these weird lands that don't make sense to these Teist D&D people. And Draconis says to Sergeant Raskin, "The world around you speaks your language. It can do no else. All you see bears the paint of your words. I wager none of you noted the flowers amidst the weeds, or the dance of the swifts above the old spring, or how the sky, for but a moment, was like the purest porcelain." So these border swords are complaining about this desolation. Arathan is contemplating the desolation around them. But Draconis is pointing out something, a different perspective. He's, that's important because, he also points out the different perspective on the Azathani. He says the name is meaningless, and even more than that, it is misleading. And so, Arathan asks, "Are they gods?" And his father says, "If they are gods in waiting, and they're waiting for worshippers." And I just love the conversation between them. And he says, "What falls under our hand, Arathan, we bend to our will. The horses we ride worship us as if we were gods. But you and I, we can taste the bitterness of that. Because if we are gods, then we are unreliable gods, imperfect gods, cruel gods. Yet the horses help us in the face of all that and can only yearn for our blessing. Should its master beat it, still it yearns, seeing what all living things seek, the grace of being. Still, its God ever turns away. You may pity that horse, but not its desire." And so the key word there is the grace of being. And Arathan asks, what God would break us? So, that raises just a whole bunch of questions. If you even think back to the Malazan Book of the Fallen, man, does that raise a lot of questions about the relationship between worshippers and gods, and how they seem to need and yet not need each other, feed off each other, but yet is it necessary? Is all that striving and this grace of being need to be centered around the worship of one being to the next. Something to think about in all of our lives, I guess. Um, let's see here. They come across. Let's see. They come across in Azathane, and Draconus states that his aspect is cold and airless, and tells his son to stay close to him. Because step away from my power, and your blood will freeze and boil. Uh, in your flesh, yeah. That's your eyes will burst, yeah. He gets pretty detailed there. Um, and so that's a display of Draconus's power yet again. This guy is just getting more powerful as the book goes on, and we as we see more and more of his aspects or whatever. Uh, and the Azathane says once again, this is another Azathane that Draconus knows, and that has met him before, and says, "Yeah, when last we met, it was on the eve of the Thelakai's disavowal." And Draconus quickly cuts him off and says, "We will not speak of that time." So there's another little hint to some ancient history about the Thelakai that we're not going to know about. And then Draconus is he mentions that he's been away from court for too long, so he's a little worried about being away from Mother Dark and what it's doing to the situation there. What does he know about that? Uh, what is he worried about specifically? Um, and the let's see that you know we're talking about they start talking about the VRC, the VITRC, um, and what people are trying to get out of it, what they're doing with it, and this Azathani that he's talking to mentions our data name. We know her from the Book of Fallen and from the novels of the Malazan Empire. We hear the Sister of Dreams. That sounds familiar. Um, and so all these names getting thrown out. And then there's the guy says the old man. That's what he's known as. Okay. He says, "Oh, there's news. The High King has built a ship." What does that mean? Um, and it meant something to Draconus. He exerts power at the mention of that, and it almost like Garathon begins to crumble and gag, and he's like, "Oh, sorry about that, kid." So, uh, I'm never good with displeasing news. That's what he says. So, uh, it, this enigma of Dragonus continues, but it's also the things that get brought up in his presence. It's not just him; it's all the things brought up in his presence. This mention of a High King who was built. That can't be Kaloa. There's just no way. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe that guy's that old. I don't know. But yeah. Anyways, moving on. We let's see. So we get some more rent and um ah. So they come across the dreaded Olar Ethil, and her and Dragonus have a history. Yeah, and they don't want to be in each other's presence. And Ola Ethel um, is always one to point out people's foibles and she pokes and she prods and she gets under your skin. That's like seems to be her aspect. Oh, she's nasty. Anyways, she points at Farron, who is tells her that she carries a child woman as a girl, um, and the hue of her blood is most unusual. She pokes, um, and she calls Draconus the suzerain of night, and Draconus threatens her with battle. Um, so things are tense. And she informs him that a Inazathane, who we found out earlier, has killed the beloved mate to Hood, Karish, the Jagged. Um, and so there was the Dragonus did not like that. There's some anguish there. He does not he's not happy about that. Hell, we kind of like Hood now after the Book of the Fallen, so we're not happy about it either. All right. Um, and she's Ola Ethil starts complaining about people um, voicing prayers in her name, and like it's like biting ants beneath the furs, just driving her mad. And you know, um, and at that point we see Draconus actually has a little sympathy for Ola Ethel at that point, but not too much, just a little. Let's not get out of hand. um, and then, but she has some sort of effect upon Raskan. Raskan can't help but fall under her power, and the rest of them seem to be able to just tell her, leave me alone. And he tells Arathan, "I meet your eyes. You are the son of Draconus. Go to." So that was like one of a hefty acknowledgement by Draconus there. And let's see, he finds Sergeant Raskan, and Raskan's really shaken. And until he gets to the point that he managed to he Arathan managed to get up the gumption of being the son of Draconus, and he gives an order to Raskan, and it kind of snaps him out of it. Stand up, let's go. And the guy's like, "Oh, as you say," you know. So it's at that point that Arathon once again. It's another growing point for him. Um, and I like this line in here that says, "What is given away for free comes back wounded." Um, you know how many times that resonates with me? I mean, I understand that in the book it's meant as a metaphorical thing for um, giving respect, giving your time, your energy, your words, your what have you, love even. But for me, for me, it's books. Whenever I give a book away, it comes back wounded. So that's just my thing. Anyways, uh, there's a there's a little line in here that from Rint that says Ola Ethel's power is called Talas. So we've heard that before. So all these origin stuff is pretty cool. Um, and they start calling him the border swords start calling him Lord Arathan. So all right. Ola Ethel tells Draconus that his love has ascended into godhood as she sits on that throne of darkness. And they let's see they and she goes on. She says, "Yeah, I'm a cruel goddess. I meant it." She still she still pokes and prods. She asked Draconus how our wretched spawn are doing, and Draconus says if they had a fourth sister, she would be called Venom. As it is, alas, they have no need for a fourth sister. Three memories of pain, Olar Ethil says. Wow. Um, but they do recognize that Arathan has a different mother. So that we kind of knew that that's who Envy, Spite, and Malice were. Um, and Draconus, somebody asked him if all his seeds must be errant, left to grow wild forever untamed. Daughters would be the death of you. You keep them too close, smothered by your neglect. It is no wonder they are venomous. And he says, perhaps I have no answer to my children. Fascinating conversation. Fascinating conversation. She mentions Cowden Brood making a sculpture of Thelakai. Um, and it's mentioned that Olar Ethil nurtured Burn at her own breast, and still I underestimated her. I fear that it is fated. I fear it is that fated disregard that will see the end of me someday. And she chooses not to look into the future to see her own death. So it's not that she can't. She chooses not to. So Olar Ethil, she is a very intriguing elder creature here. And wow. And it just keeps going on. And then this guy Rint, who's one of the Border Swords, after they have been dismissed by Draconus to go back, Draconus is going on alone with Arathan, his son, and this guy Rint, he's kind of like, wow, the Highborn, they are right to fear this consort and his influence in the court. They are right to want him ousted and brought down, discarded, driven away in disgrace. This guy's made up his mind. He was just working for the wrong side here. So I don't know what's going to come of that later on. And then Olar Ethil finds Raskan by himself, and because she knows she has her hooks in him. And what happens in this with Raskan in here is just it's pretty gross. Yeah, she basically takes his head into her belly and cuts it off with her distended belly. It's really weird. So I was like, yikes. All right. So then the rest of the Border Swords eventually catch up, find him like that. They're upset. They want revenge. One of them Ferrin, I think, spots Olar Ethil in the tree, and she yells at her. But she's kind of hidden too. But she knows she's there. The rest of them can't see her. So it's kind of interesting how only Ferrin knew, because Ferrin was touched earlier by Olar Ethil with the whole pregnancy thing. And finally, when they decide to leave to take Raskan's body back to honor it somewhat, one of them stays behind and lights that tree that she's in on fire, and you hear the screams of the witch. Oh yeah, that was intense. And then it just as the chapter began with Arathan, it ends with Arathan talking to his father again, and this time he's a little more sure, and they're talking about Ferrin, and he's they're like, oh, okay, yeah, he's like, you're right, Dad, I had to give her up. I don't actually love her. I just thought it was love. And but he says, but she will make a good mother. So that's how the chapter ended. That kind of a nice way there. All right. So that was about 35 or so pages in the book here, and so that wraps up chapter 11. Next week we'll get to chapter 12. I have no doubt of that. All right. With all that said, be good to each other. I hope you're at these points, and if you found anything that I missed in this chapter, please let me know. All right.